Hello, I'm Justin Moss for Florida Grand Opera, here to talk for a few minutes about the exciting conclusion to this current season, which will be the South Florida premiere of Daniel Catan's opera Florencia en el Amazonas. This is a great piece which, unlike many contemporary operas that only see their premiere production and then maybe with luck one or two revivals, this is an opera that's been done a lot by many leading opera companies around the nation and throughout the world. This is an exceptional example of magic realism, a movement which is predominant, especially in Latin American literature these days. And it is a device that's singularly stimulating in that you create a minutely detailed, realistic landscape and situation and have it invaded by events, things, or people in situations that are so extraordinary, one is really hard-pressed to believe them or accept them. They are magic with no scientific explanation possible, really, and yet in magic realism in literature and in films and certainly in music, these events occur and are just accepted as basically supernatural occurrences in our everyday world. They can be very provocative. They can suggest agendas that we don't want to deal with or want to face, and they also create a world that in many ways is parallel to the one we occupy and yet riper with opportunity for resolution, for fulfillment, and for any number of things. Daniel Catan's second opera, Rappaccini's Daughter, was first given its premiere in San Diego, at the San Diego Opera. It represented the first time a Mexican composer had received a commission for an opera from a North American opera company. It met with pretty decent acceptance and enthusiasm by the audiences and by the critics as well, but it was his second opera, which is a commission principally from Houston Grand Opera, where it had its premiere in 1996, that put him on the map. This was Florencia en el Amazonas. It was a big event in the operatic world when this premiere occurred, and has gone on to launch one of the most popular contemporary operas of the last century, certainly, and it's still being produced extensively today. Based on the success of Florencia, he was commissioned by Placido Domingo and Los Angeles Opera to create a work for them, which is entitled Il Postino, based on the famous Italian movie. Placido Domingo sang a lead role in the world premiere of that, and it was by now accepted widely that Daniel Catan was one of the most gifted and productive contemporary composers of opera. He wrote many kinds of music in addition to opera, but he's principally known for opera. He was born in Mexico City, but educated both abroad in Europe and in the United States. He received a PhD in musical composition from Princeton and studied with, of all people, Milton Babbitt there. He was a brilliant polymath of a mind, interested in many things, very widely educated, and cultivated friends all over the world. In fact, he received permission from an acquaintance who was, in fact, Gabriel Garcia Marquez, the Nobel Prize laureate in literature in 1985, to use material from his writing, not literally taking one of his novels and creating an opera of that novel, but using examples, situations that he could draw from two principal works, one of them being 100 Years of Solitude, and the other, Love in the Time of Cholera. He received permission and used situations from these two pieces of literature to create his opera, Florencia en el Amazonas. This is about a voyage up the Amazon. And again, as I discussed a minute earlier, it contains elements of magic realism that come as great surprises, inexplicable situations, and yet I think at the same time it creates an edge of excitement and surprise that take us to a new dimension. The opera opens at a dock in South America, and one of the leading characters in the opera, Rio Lobo, who is really the spirit of the Amazon, opens the opera observing that the boat El Dorado is loaded up with passengers. Now they're waiting the final arrivals, and it will be taking a journey up the Amazon River to the legendary opera house of Manaus. It is here that the great world-famous soprano Florencia Grimaldi will be coming out of retirement in her native country of South America after an absence of 20 years and appearing in concert at the opera house. She has fans all over the world, but some of her greatest fans have taken passage on the boat El Dorado to go to Manaus and hopefully have an experience that's going to be life-changing, culminating in years of adoring this woman and her work, of experiencing her in person and celebrating her return to her homeland. Coming onto the boat is a journalist whose name is Rosalba, and she has been working for 2 years on a biography of Florencia Grimaldi, the great opera singer. And Grimaldi is famous for never granting interviews. She hopes so that she will get one that will enable her to polish up and finish this labor of 2 years now. She's never met the singer, but certainly looks forward to having an opportunity and hopes that perhaps she will be the great exception and she will get an interview with the star. On board the ship, she soon encounters the nephew of the Capitan of the ship. He's a young man who's become disillusioned with his life. He's not attained much. He works at menial tasks on the ship, but knows that the many opportunities that are available to him in life have thus far eluded him, one of them certainly being romance and love. And she identifies with this, Rosalba, somewhat herself, and certainly has an emotional connection with the young man in terms of both of them being both fearful at the prospect of falling in love and fearful of seizing the opportunities that might present themselves during the course of their lives. There's a middle-aged couple also, Paula and Alvaro, who get on the ship. Their marriage has grown difficult, let's say, and has begun to founder somewhat. And they're hoping that by making this journey up the Amazon, they can restore the love that was once so powerful in their lives and overcome some of the bickering and difficulties that they've been saddled with and that have more or less embittered them over the past several years. Then, of course, finally there comes a passenger who gets on the ship, and it is, in fact, Florencia Grimaldi traveling incognito. None of the people know who she is. She simply states that she's making a journey of rediscovery in many respects, and they welcome her aboard. All of them make acquaintances of one another. As they progress up the river, a series of events occur. The passengers bond somewhat, but we have an inexplicable situation where the book that Rosalba has been working on for 2 years falls overboard and is retrieved by the nephew of the captain. It's suffered some damage but seems to be salvageable. We also get into some patchy weather. It grows really sketchy out there on the river, and a storm picks up that finally seems to be overpowering them. There's a wonderful example, a scene masterfully created, where the ship is absolutely inundated with pink rain in the middle of this great storm. In despair, they realize they're really in trouble out at sea, and great fallen logs come up against the side of the ship. Alvaro, Paula's husband, goes to try to deflect them away from the ship, but gets into trouble, falls overboard, and is lost in the sea. The captain is injured. He loses consciousness. His nephew takes the wheel and tries to steer the ship to safety, but all soon becomes lost, and the ship is wrecked and runs aground, and all of the passengers badly disoriented, and to the point where when Florencia regains consciousness, she's not absolutely sure, but that she isn't in fact dead, and has to cut herself on a mirror and bleed to see that she in fact is still alive. Riolobo now reappears. He has also appeared at the height of the storm, calling for mercy from the spirit of the Amazon to protect these passengers. One of the most effective visual scenes, absolutely transfiguring, really, in the middle of the opera. He reappears on the ship, though, now, and in a series of remarkable incidents. Alvaro is recovered from the sea. The nephew of the Capitan and Rosalba are thrilled to discover one another still alive, and they realize that they have in fact been saved. They have a moment of spiritual refreshment, if you will, and realize that now they can proceed on with their journeys. They have reconnected as couples. Paula and Alvaro are thrilled to finally be reunited, and realized in that separation when she believed him dead how much they really meant to one another, and so they start out refreshed and renewed in their relationships to proceed to Manaus for the opera house for this concert. Just before they arrive, though, it becomes clear that there's a problem. They're greeted at the shore before anyone can pull up to the dock and disembark that there is cholera in the city. And this is a terrible, terrible scourge that often these epidemics would kill thousands and thousands of people, decimate the population. So it was very dangerous, impossible to disembark, to get off of the ship. And in the course of their disappointment at realizing their fulfillment is going to have to be put off for another time, they're not going to have the concert or see it, Rosalba is commiserating with Florencia about her manuscript having gone overboard yet again, and this time really been washed out and most of it lost, and wondering how she'll ever reconstruct those 2 years of work. And during a very interesting exchange that they have, Rosalba comes to realize that this woman who's been on the journey with them the whole time is in fact Florencia Grimaldi, the great diva. And she's come to try to restore the sense of hope, passion, and love that had nourished her when she became world famous, but which she has lost during the period of separation from the young man she'd fallen in love with, Cristobal, who has the curious occupation of being a butterfly collector. And at the end, when they realize they can't disembark, their fulfillments will have to be put off, we go into an incredibly beautiful and mystic moment of transformation when it's not clear exactly what happens to Florencia. It appears that many things might have taken place and transpired. One, she may have contracted cholera, and in a big episode of complete hallucination, envisioned herself reuniting with her lost lover, Cristobal, who had disappeared in the Amazon jungles. Possibly, though, her spirit has just drifted in his direction, and they have been reunited as one at the very end. And whatever has occurred, though, we have seen things that maybe have really changed us, certainly changed our perspective on being alive, and given us completely new ground on which to stand and observe the world around us and the people with whom we live and interact. Daniel Catan's music is astonishing. He's very, very lyrical. His vocal line is melodic and rich, and music critics and musicologists compared his writing to the music of Puccini, Ravel, Debussy. Very, very rich and very lush, and much of the orchestration even at times having the depth and the power and sheen of the music of Richard Strauss. This is an extraordinary opportunity to hear one of the great, great contemporary opera compositions in a production that is truly astonishing. It has deep, penetrating use of video projections worked out by the stage director, Jose Maria Condeme, and it is just a fabulous visual experience as well as an oral and dramatic one. Don't miss this really moving, challenging production of Daniel Catan's Florencia in el Amazonas, which will conclude Florida Grand Opera's 2017-18 season. I will certainly be there for all 5 performances and hope to see you at least one. Thank you for joining us.